Hello, I'm very happy today to welcome in my Let's Self-Care Together series, Ginny Wholley. We're going to talk together about a topic that is dear to my heart, and it's mindfulness. And I was lucky to have Ginny as a teacher, a guide through the Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction program I took from January to March this year, and it was really enlightening to me. And I'm talking a lot. I'm going to let Ginny introduce herself now, and we will go deeper in this topic on mindfulness with her.
Well, thanks, Gail, and welcome. And it's so nice to be here with you to talk about this, my favorite subject. What is mindfulness, and how can it help us to be mindful? And so my background is that I'm a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. And I've been teaching yoga and meditation, mindfulness types of activities for a lot longer than I've been certified as an MBSR teacher. I've been teaching since probably 1996, I think it is. But currently I focus on this mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And I'd love to, share a lot about that, but we'll wait till the end and we'll spend some time right now just talking about what is mindfulness. And so, mindfulness is about being fully present for the moments of our lives. This presence really comes from the practice of paying attention to our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical sensations with kindness. With kindness, key word there. And with this practice, we see more clearly that we are in relationship with each moment. Through this insight, we recognize we have the freedom and the responsibility to choose how we live. And so it's a very simple definition about what mindfulness is. Sometimes we can get so caught up in all of the teachings that are so readily available and to the details of it. But the essence of it is just that. And of course, there's so much more to the particular practices, but it does sound simple, but it's really not easy. It takes, yeah, you're nodding.
Yes, I'm nodding, Ginny. I'm acknowledging that because it's my own quest and this journey of mindfulness. And yes, it's not easy and it requires practice and self-awareness, but it's a beautiful journey. And it's simple and yeah, complicated for us as human beings at the same time, but it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah, and it is complicated for us as human beings. It's, you said that so beautifully because we are human, and so, that's where this kindness piece really comes in. But it does take consistent and intentional practice because over our lifetimes, we've really cultivated our minds. We've cultivated our minds to react to different stimuluses. These stimuluses can be internal stimuluses, they can be external stimuluses, they can be our thoughts, our emotions, or anything that we're being stimulated from the outdoor, or not outdoor necessarily, but outside of the internal stimuluses through our eyes and our ears, our nose, our sense of touch, our sense of spaciousness and being present in the world. And so through those various senses, and the mind being perhaps the biggest sense of all, we take in a lot of input. And because we're taking in so much input, we get into this mode of being on autopilot. So much of our time, we are in a state of distraction. We're traversing from one thing to the next, and we hardly even notice that we're moving through this world of stimuluses, processing through it. And so as the current thinking is that average attention span is only about 9 seconds, and that we spend about 47% of our days in a state of distraction. And that's when you just pause for a moment to think about what that really means, that nearly half of the time that we're awake, and I don't know how much of that relates to how much we're sleeping, but in that time that we're actually awake, almost half of it, we're not really present to what's happening. And the consequences of that can be significant. You know, many of us probably have had that experience of driving and arriving somewhere and not remembering what actually happened on that drive. Yes, you're nodding your head.
It's always remind me of an experience I had when I quit my job for a new job. And one morning going to work, I actually ended up to my previous job instead of my new job because I just was on autopilot. It always made me smile.
But perhaps maybe you've had that experience as you're articulating, or perhaps you've reached the end of a sleeve of cookies in astonishment that, oh wow, what did I just do? Because I just did it so mindlessly. Or maybe you've lashed out at somebody, not because they did anything that was inappropriate, but because you were just stressed. That experience of stress. And then, of course, there's the regret that happens after that. So, being unaware, we kind of we flow through our lives being misguided by the conditioning of our minds that we've trained ourselves to work with. So mindfulness is really training ourselves to pay attention and to be awake in those moments. So, if you think about it, the neural pathways in the brain are much like a travel route that we would lay down. And it's such a great example that works really with what you were just saying. You had this route that you traveled all the time because it was the most efficient route. So you laid that down in your neural pathways. You didn't even have to think about it. But, maybe things changed, like you got a new job. Or in the case that the example I was planning on sharing was just that they maybe built a highway over the course of time that would be more efficient. Or they built a shopping mall in the area and it's caused traffic patterns. So you would benefit from revising these neural pathways or those travel routes that and so that's what we're really doing with mindfulness, is we're kind of rewiring, like very much like the title of your video logs there, rewiring to a more intentional state of awareness, to kind of being aware of things. This learned behavior, these patterns in our mind, isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be very useful, right? We have to triage or encounter, process many of interactions all day long, right? Thousands and thousands of them. I think Inc. magazine recently said that we make 35,000 decisions every day. And that's just in that area, just thinking of all the things that are processing through. It's an awful lot. So having a mind that's really efficient at processing is great. For instance, if I'm driving down the highway and a car comes too close to me, I'm going to swerve. That's going to be automatic reaction. I don't even have to think about it, right? I don't even have to think about it. I'm just going to swerve out of the way when I see it. And it happens before I even cognitively understand what's going on. But through this practice of mindfulness, we really can become more aware. And it might be beneficial for instance, say we're working together as a colleague that I'm working with, that every time they say something, it seems to be not very sharp or helpful. And so I kind of started to, just turn a deaf ear to them. And if I continue to do that out of habit, I will really lose the opportunity to have an open communication and work with this particular individual. And it not only affects the relationship with the individual, but it affects the whole relationship with the organization. So it's really important to pay attention. And so in this training, this mindfulness training, it gives us the opportunity to pay attention, and we learn to recognize when we are reacting or flying on autopilot versus being present and intentional. And when we are present and intentional, it has a sense of feeling more wholesome. And so relating versus reacting can feel renewing and rewarding, where reacting can feel depleting and exhausting. And so as we open our heart to this awareness, it's through meditation that the practice of meditation, that we begin to see. In that pause, we begin to find that we actually have a choice. It isn't easy to choose because the mind has been conditioned for so long. So this is where kindness comes into play. As we begin to see our reactions, we can first start we can see that there's also some judgment that's there, because we often can become very judgmental about towards ourselves, and even defensive of the patterns that have been formed.
Mm-hmm.
So we begin to defend our own self, our own experiences, and it keeps us clinging to these old patterns that we may have outgrown, that may not be serving us well any longer. And so through this practice, we can begin to see, when we bring kindness to the experience, it empowers us to have the courage and the compassion to actually look and be present to what's really, really there. So I'd like to share with you a story. This is an example about how mindfulness can positively change someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
So a number of years ago, I was teaching a class and a mindfulness based stress reduction course. And there was a woman in the course she's a mom. She's married. She has a partner that she's been married to for a number of years. She's a very successful counselor. She's an activist. She's a musician. She's really a very accomplished individual. But she has a very busy life. It's very heavily scheduled. So every day she follows her routine. She gets up in the morning. She makes lunches for the family. She packs everything up. She gets her daughter into the car, and they drive off to school. She drops her daughter off, and this is so routine. They both get out of the car, they say goodbye, and then she usually travels on to work. But she's about 4 weeks into this 8-week MBSR course, and she's had the home practice assignment of paying attention to those ordinary things that feel pleasant in life. So she's being very aware, and she gets out of the car, and her daughter wraps her arms around her and says, "Mom, I love you." And she just paused, and she felt the experience. And as she's sharing the story, the tears are streaming down her face. And I said, "Annette, what's happening there?" And she said, I can't believe that I've missed this. All these days, I have missed this experience just by being so busy. I'm getting teary-eyed just telling the story because it's so beautiful. But if you can think of just that, it took a little bit of courage for her to turn towards that.
Mm-hmm.
and recognize that she really didn't have to do anything different than just be present in that moment for that experience. But for her to have that open-heartedness, that heartfeltness, to look at the situation and to be able to say, there's an opportunity here for me to really live my life in the joy and the beauty that's already here. So much of our lives, we just don't even notice the absolute miracle it is to live, to walk this planet, to be present to it. And so this is what mindfulness helps with. Mindfulness helps with that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. And I really relate to the fact, it's what matters is, the way we experience actually our lives, because you can do the same thing and experience it in very different ways depending on your mindset, your openness, your presence to the moment. And it's a choice we can make to develop this self-awareness and decide what we want to bring out in our life. And it can be joy, it can be love, And that's personally what I want to focus on. And the work I'm also doing with my clients. Coaching is really related to mindfulness too, in the way like we are developing this self-awareness and bringing the attention to the moment. And so it's really a tool that has been, and it's more than a tool, it's really a mindset. I mean, a way to approach your life that is so powerful. And as you said, it's like we said in the beginning, it's both simple. It's being present in the moment sounds very simple, and at the same time, it takes work and consistency to be willing to be there in the moment, because that's not the way most of us have trained our mind. We've trained our mind to lean, back to the past or worry about the future, and not ground ourselves in the moment. So it's a beautiful work, and I'm so happy to talk. I mean, I love hearing you talking about it, Ginny, and because what you share is so powerful.
And it does wake us up to our experiences. And one thing that I'm always aware of and cautious of is that, sometimes as we speak about mindfulness, and as I do, or share stories like an app, there's this sense that I might leave people with, that it is, that it leads to this happiness and beauty, and it can. Absolutely, it can open us up to seeing the beauty that's already there, and to tap into our natural resources, and to the joy that's actually within us. But it also awakens us to the difficult emotions and experiences of our lives. But it's empowering that we can actually be present to those experiences. And so often we are, as you said, we are kind of stuck in the past, just ruminating and living that over and over again. And in those experiences, when we relive them, they have a very strong impact in our psychology and in our physiology, in our bodies as well. We do actually relive them. If you can feel the tension in your body. But then, there's often not wanting to be present to that experience, and just push it away, and move out into the future somewhere. So creating the space with kindness is really important. And when these things pop up, is to be kind to ourselves. We are human. As we started this conversation with, right? We are human, and our brains have been wired. There's that old kind of saying, the neurons that fire together wire together. And so these neural pathways are pretty stuck there until we start to pay attention to them. And so when we pay attention to what's actually happening and direct our attention in an intentional way, and that's what creates this, what's called neuroplasticity. And it allows those neurons to uncouple and to take a new form, that's a new choice, right? And come away from that autopilot. So there's this discernment that actually occurs. And kindness, I think, is really essential. Self-kindness is essential to allowing that to happen. Because when we begin to see and these things unfold, and we have the courage to look at it, we can be very harsh on ourselves. And I've seen this in so many people. I've seen it in myself. We can be very harsh. And if we can just have some compassion for ourselves and be kind and say, oh yeah, I see that. And that's okay. And I can actually be with that. Even if it's only for a minute, to, those difficult emotions when they rise up, to, maybe touch into them, be as present to them as we can. And sometimes, we need to turn away from them because they're too strong, and that's okay. But if we can give them a little bit of attention, even, it helps to disarm them. It takes their power away. That past is over. But sometimes it brings up some other emotions and physical reactions that might be in the body pretty deeply. And so it's a process. It's not like turning on a light switch. It doesn't happen quickly. It takes a commitment to that continued compassionate practice over and over again.
And it's very important, this emphasis on kindness, because I think a lot of us, as you mentioned, can be very harsh on ourselves, and like the compassion we can give to the people we love around us, sometimes we do not give it to ourselves. And it's also a journey of learning. And I'm in this regard, I think it's really connecting to this self-care practice and self-love, and accepting ourselves as we are, and welcoming these emotions, and making choices also through that, because we can see them, we can make choices and let them go through and go the way we want. I have a personal journey of denying my own emotions in my life. It led me to depression because I didn't want to look at it, and it was just like, I guess, accumulating there, and I would not look at it. And when I finally had to look at it, it's when everything started to open up for me, and I was able to accept what was happening, deal with it, and find my way through it. And mindfulness has been very helpful in this regard.
You know, what you're saying is really so empowering, because when we're able to turn towards our experiences, even if they're difficult, and even if for a brief amount of time, we begin to really learn something. And it's in learning something that we unlearn those behaviors and patterns that are so deeply ingrained in us. You know, when we really learn about our experience from the perspective of ourselves in a heartfelt way, then we are able to let go of them. Not in a forceful way, but almost like just opening the hand. Oh, this is what's here. And letting it go on its own. Those things that we hold so tightly, right? You know, our habits and our patterns. So I thought what I'd share is a little bit of a practice with us. And so I'm going to take a few moments to introduce what the practice is and what we're actually doing in the practice. So it's called focused attention practice, where we choose a place to put our attention, and inevitably, within seconds almost, the mind moves away from that place. And it is really great because we can see that, you know, just that automatic reaction of what happens, right? What do we usually like to go to? Our to-do list, or our creative minds, or our worry minds, or fear, or what might be there. So we set intention to focus, the mind wanders. We all have that one down really well. The next step is that we become aware that the mind's wandering. Just like driving the car and not knowing where you've gone till you got to your destination, the experience of meditation can often be that our mind just wanders and we don't even notice that it's wandering. But then we become aware. Oh, I'm not focused on this any longer. I'm in this place, part of this place of mindfulness. And in that moment, there's an opportunity to learn about ourselves. So I encourage folks not to rush right back to whatever focal point we're working with, but to pause with that and just, recognize what's there. I see what's here. I'm caught up in an emotional journey that, is continuing from some prior experience. Oh, I'm overwhelmed and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get my next 10 things done in the next 25 minutes, and it's an impossible task. Just noticing what's there and feeling kind towards yourself about it. Letting a little bit of kindness be present. And then when it might feel really delicious to actually stay on that to-do list or stay in that emotional state, that's when you choose to come back to that point of focus. And so what you're doing there is you're basically telling the mind that I know I've programmed you for a long period of time to work in this way. But now what I'm doing is saying, I see you. I see that you're doing this. And that's not really what I want you to do. What I really want you to do is focus. So I'm going to come back to my intention. It creates a little conflict in the part of the brain called the ACC, the PFC, the prefrontal cortex. And in that, it helps to facilitate the neuroplasticity. So that's what this practice is all about. And so I'll offer a different, through this practice, we'll practice for about 5 minutes. And I actually don't have a bell. I have a bell, but it won't ring on my computer. So I'm going to invite us into the practice with my voice, and I'll end the practice with my voice.
Okay.
So it will be about 5 minutes, and I'll move us from focal point to focal point. And we refer to those focal points as anchors. So that's where you rest your attention. Notice your mind wandering, acknowledge it, and come back. Sounds good?
Yes.
All right, so I'll invite you into the practice by coming into a posture that feels intentional. Maybe sitting up straight, letting your back pull away from the chair. If this is available for you, any posture that you need to be in is fine. Letting go of anything that you might have in your hands, and just letting the palms of your hands rest on your lap. Placing your feet flat on the floor if that's possible. And then lowering your gaze down or closing your eyes. And I'll invite you to draw in a long, deep breath through the nose. As you breathe in, breathe slowly and fully. And when you reach the top of your breath, the capacity of your lungs, exhale through the nose, exhaling as slowly as possible. And then just repeating that twice more. And as you complete the third deep breath, you might notice shifting in your body, maybe releasing the tension that might be present, feeling a bit more ease, a bit more spaciousness. Letting your breath return to normal. And bringing your awareness to your breath. Acknowledging that you're breathing. Breathing in and feeling the body expand. Breathing out and releasing. Nothing to do, just to be present to breathing in and out. You can direct your awareness to wherever you feel the breath most prominently in your body. It might be in the chest, or in the nose, or in the belly. Sensing into the body breathing. And you may become aware that your mind has gotten caught up in something. Maybe a sound from outside, or a thought might be present, something you have to do. Acknowledge whatever's here with kindness, and bringing your awareness back to the place in the body you feel your breath most prominently. And then shifting your attention, moving your attention from the breath to the palms of your hands. As you bring your attention to the palms of your hands, noticing that you can direct your attention. Maybe sensing into the surface contact of the hands and your lap or some other surface. Perhaps you might be aware of a sense of temperature in the hands. The tops might feel cool, and the bottoms may feel warm. And again, aware of when the mind moves away from the hands. Acknowledging where the mind moves to. And bring your attention back. And then letting your attention move all the way down to the soles of your feet. It's feeling the feet connecting to the earth below them. Many people find that the feet don't have any sensations at all, and to just be present to whatever you're aware of in this area, maybe even just knowing that the feet are where they are. And there's no need to judge the experience. We're just letting it be as it is. There's no right or wrong way to practice. Then once again, moving your attention back to the breath. The sense of the body breathing. And then we'll close out this practice with 3 more deep breaths, the way that we began. Drawing in a slow and full breath in. Slowly blowing it out. And again, breathing in through the nose. And breathing out through the nose. one more time. Slow and long breath in. And out. And before opening your eyes, I invite you to just check in with your body in its entirety. Just sensing in if anything is settled or shifted from when you began. And then opening your eyes. And maybe even trying to stay connected to this practice as you go throughout the day now.
Thank you, Ginny.
You're welcome. And so, I'd like to share a little bit about the Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction program. It's too bad we don't have an opportunity with a live audience to do Q&A because it's, there's always so many questions that rise up. But I invite, if I can share my website, I invite people to go there and you can connect and ask questions that way if you have questions. I'm going to rename myself. I'm realizing that that's not quite there. And then I can, when I rename, my website is my name. It's as one word. I'll just put it in that way.
And I will also mention it on the YouTube presentation of the video, so people can click there to go directly to your website.